Roy Haynes had to be the hippies. Roy and Philly, those two are the hippies. Those two are brothers. To me, they're joined at the hip, and people don't realize it. Roy Haynes loved music and loved to play. He's influenced by Joe Jones, Max, Kluke, and Buhana. And he's personification of being creative, taking those influences and making his own personality out of it. And Roy, man, Roy could swing. It took me a long time to understand Roy's swing because I'd been listening to Buhana, you know, but man, when I played with Roy, Roy had it and he was all that. I mean, Roy Haynes, man, you just don't get hipper than Roy Haynes, really. He said, I might not be the hippest, but ain't no one hipper. What I saw in Buddy Rich was a man that was another person that was passionate about playing music, playing the drums. And there was no one that could play it better. No one could play it better. He played differently. This man was amazing. And he was an inspiration to Max Roach. You know, a lot of people don't understand that. He was Max used to look up to Buddy when he was young, because Buddy was out there a little before him. And he played with such beauty, you know. So he was an inspiration to a lot of guys, you know. And show you how great his talent was. His talent was timeless, because what he played was bebop, and became what they call hard bop. And, you know, I mean, because Philly Joe, a lot of the things you hear Philly Joe play comes directly from Buddy Rich, you know, and became the inspiration for what we later called controlled freedom or free bop, or things that Tony did, and fusion. So this man, you know, his playing is an integral part of what a lot of people did, you know. No less than Max Roach, you know. I'm saying Max, because as I say that, I don't want to say it as though his was and Max wasn't either. Of course, Max and Art Blakey, you got to give him credit for being fusion in a weird way, even though the fusion drummers don't know it, you know. But Buddy Rich technically was the inspiration, and the things he played and the way he played his instrument. And you can hear out of Buddy, he definitely came from Gene Krupa and Chick Webb. But I mean, he was such a prodigy, you know. He upped the technical game for everybody, and arguably unsurpassed. I think ELVIN is the evolution of Art Blakey and Roy Haynes. You listen to the things, the triplets Art Blakey played, and the approach of Roy Haynes and put them together, you hear Elvin Jones. You also hear Max and Elvin. You also hear Kluke and Elvin. And someone pointed out recently, you hear some Shadow Wilson. And of course, him being who he is, he loved Chick Webb as well. But the innovations that Art Blakey and Roy put forth, and Max, is all in Elvin Jones, man. And also, you know, you can hear some of his contemporaries in him. You can hear Philly Joe, little Philly Joe in Elvin. You can hear Little Philly in Elvin, man. But Elvin Jones took that stuff. Now, what he did with it was amazing. I mean, he just took it, and everybody had, even Art Blakey had to look at it and say, wow. And you wound up hearing Art Blakey copying Elvin. You hear Elvin coming from Art, then you hear Art coming from Elvin, you know, after a while. And I mean, what can you say about this man? He legitimately revolutionized the way drums played. I mean, just like his predecessors did. To be your predecessor, sometimes you have to do that, you know. And he, man, you know, there's nobody could play like Elvin Jones. Tony could emulate Elvin. He could do a good Elvin. But nobody could, I mean, I've seen Elvin Jones on some nights, and you said, man, I don't think anybody could play that much drums. I mean, whoa. I mean, and now Elvin shares this with Art. He put his heart out there every time he plays. And he plays with so much conviction and truth. Purity. You hear the purity of jazz when you hear Elvin Jones. And when I say the purity, I mean the purity of all that came before him as well. When you hear him, you hear the truth, man. And he got a press roll, you know. It comes from Art too. But man, this man, the way he breaks up the time, and it's all right, you know. It's right. He knows. I mean, he feels the pulse in 3 different meters, you know. He feels it in a duple meter. He feels it in a triple meter. He feels a quarter note or a half note. He just amazing. Love him. Love him. AT was one of my best friends. He used to come over to my house every other day and hang out till wee hours of the night, and I'd go over his house, and you know, AT was something else. He really admired Philly Joe Jones. He loved Max Roach and Art Blakey was his first idols, but after a while, Philly was his man, and he was dapper like Philly, and he was a part of that clique, you know. And Roy, he liked Roy Haynes, and AT, I used to go over his house. He used to make spaghetti and shrimp. He used to like that. And he was a bebopper. He loved music, you know. But AT was a little different than Art and Max and Roy, and where those guys took the music serious, took drumming serious. AT would say he didn't take it that serious. He did it because he liked to play, period. He didn't think he was shaking up the world. Art Blakey felt he was changing the world when he was playing. He thought he was bringing something to the people. And that was when sometimes me and AT used to have a little differences, because I thought music was important too, wasn't serious. And we used to have arguments about it. I remember one time we argued about it, and then Dizzy Gillespie got on, I think, a TV show, and somebody asked Dizzy, do he think that jazz is serious music? And Dizzy said, well, you think I'm kidding? You think I'm playing? And the guy said, no, but I mean, do you think it's, how relevant do you think it is? And Dizzy said, well, people has died for this music. I think that's serious enough. So that was my thing to AT. But AT was an amazing player, man. He was something else. And he was part of the history, you know, and by being friends with these guys, you can get a close look at what was happening at that time, and he was a representative of it. I saw Clifford Jarvis, who was Tony's one of his dear friends as well. And man, one thing I'll say, now Clifford Jarvis was an amazing drummer as well. Clifford Jarvis, like Alan would say, he could burn. He wasn't as innovative as Tony, but he could burn. And I remember seeing Clifford Jarvis play with Arthur Blythe. And all I remember is the drums were smoking, the intensity. He had an intensity about him that was something that's like he wouldn't let up, you know. Like he was trying to prove something to somebody, and he was bad, man. So, and he's another one in the line of drummers that was really playing the instrument well, you know. Boston drummers. Billy Higgins come to mind too as one that played with absolute beautiful sense of dynamics. Billy Higgins is one that plays totally for the music. Yeah, Alan Dawson, very special, very special. Now, a lot of the rudimental things that you hear in Tony, you're going to hear in Alan Dawson. Alan definitely had a way of approaching rudiments musically. I hear similarity, and that's because Alan was his teacher. Did Tony re-influence Alan? Yeah, of course. Alan heard what Tony did and was re-influenced by it, even as early as soon as Tony joined Miles, he said so. But Alan before Tony had a technique that was just amazing, you know, and had a flow and had a conception, you know, and Alan is second to none in his the blend of creativity and technique. He's that, and put him in a pantheon of great drummers. He goes before his student Clifford Jarvis and those guys, you know, and if it wasn't for Alan Dawson, the concepts that Jack DeJohnette and Lenny White and Billy Cobham later utilized came directly from Alan. Now, Jack DeJohnette is like Lenny, the next generation of after Tony that came in that really was understood, that really loved Tony and really loved Elvin, and utilized those influences to come up with something personal, you know. And they both happened to appear on Bitches Brew, which is really interesting. And they both went on to have parallel careers. Although I think after a while, Lenny became so successful in pop area, people forgot about Lenny playing straight ahead, and people started looking at Jack more, and where they both were some amazing drummers, amazing artists. And Jack is an uncompromising artist. When Jack sits down and play, you feel the spirit of the music in it too. Al's another great, special individual that I love, you know. Al is one of those drummers that play with a beautiful sense of dynamic. It seems like Al plays for the saxophone player. He listens to the sax solo. He listens to the piano solo. You know, almost to subjugate what he's playing himself for that. But when but the stuff he's playing is some bad stuff, you know. So Al is another special guy. Lenny White, he was one of those guys that play in a certain way. Lenny was one of the first people that really understood Tony and Elvin, you know, of the next generation, and tried to combine that, you know. And I mean, to a point that, I mean, he really became a force, you know, within himself. The great thing about Tony is he took all those guys that he admired, and we talk about Buddy Rich, and then you got to bring in Alan Dawson again, because Alan was the link between that kind of technique for Tony. Tony was really influenced by African drumming and Indian drumming, tablas, you know. He was very influenced by those things, and I learned from him some of the things that he got from, you know, from listening to Indian music, you know, and he applied them to the blues, you know, and I really got it. So Tony was a very advanced, he was the next step, and Miles said there was never no one else like him. And to this date, there hasn't been. Now, will somebody take the ball and really go for it and be the next step after him? I'm sure he's hoping too. I'm sure he don't want the drum legacy to die with him. But at this point, he's a source of inspiration for everybody. And I would say for any drummer that want to take it further, look at everything he did. Don't just take a lick he did, or just take a piece. Take everything, just like he did his predecessors. Tony was spiritually close to Art too, because Art would dialogue with you. Art would get up there and he didn't just keep time or just support you. Art became part of the music, you know. His rhythms became part of the front line, and Tony's rhythms became part of the music, like a orchestral accompaniment. So, you know, Art's more maybe like a big band. Tony was like an orchestra, you know, big band accompaniment, orchestral accompaniment, but the same idea of having something surround you, you know. So you have to understand Art, and you got to understand Roy, and you got to understand how Roy did an ID with a part of Roy that Tony had, you know, because you can get some stuff directly from these guys too, you know, that he might not use, even though he had it. And then the goal after you do that is, of course, you synthesize it for yourself. You know, so the next person is going to have to be that, all of that, and then more, you know, and at the very least, at least be inspired by those things. Nobody has to play like anybody. I'm not saying nobody needs to play like anybody. You know, play what you hear. If you're influenced by Connie K, play that. That's where you come from. But know everything, you know, so you can have that to draw from. I always felt it's better to not play something that somebody played because you choose not to play it than because you can't play it. Louis Hayes is another drummer that I've had the privilege of playing with a lot, and he had the fire. He was definitely influenced by Kluke and Philly Joe, and put his own unique thing to it. But Lou Hayes had that snap, boy. He had a right hand that was, he could just keep it going forever, it seemed like, you know. And I know Tony was influenced by the clarity of Lou's right hand. Jimmy Cobb had an elegance in his right hand. He was fiery, but he wasn't as animated as Philly and as flamboyant. Jimmy had a clarity in his ride cymbal that was really, like bells, ding, 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 you know, real clarity, elegant, very elegant, you know. So those are some amazing. I really had a great time playing with Jimmy, and all these guys were something else, you know. All these guys are something else, and I'm proud to have been, you know, to have played with all of these, or honored and hold their legacy or their spirit or their time inside of me. So whenever I play, I demand my drummers to have that in them. They got to, because I can't play unless you got that. I can't play. I can't hear it. What you doing? You know, it's got to have that.